Hey there everybody, I wanted to come on today and show you how to make one of our favorite Korean side dishes called kimchi. I'm going to share with you what it is, what the benefits are to eating kimchi, and also how you make it. So let's go. Okay, so kimchi is traditionally made with Napa cabbage, and basically it's fermented in the ground for months. They make it in large batches when the cabbage is in season, and they kind of ferment it and use it until the next growing season. So it's made with this Napa cabbage, and I just kind of want to show you what that is here. It's really beautiful. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut it into quarters here. So when Michael, my husband, when he was younger, I want to say like 27 or so, and I met him, he was going to this Korean restaurant called Seoul Garden here, and it was his favorite restaurant, and he'd go there almost every day for lunch. So as you pull this Napa cabbage apart, you want to make sure that you're just doing it gently so that you're not really breaking the leaves. And again, like, I'm going to cut it in quarters here. So he took me to this restaurant, this restaurant called Seoul Garden, and I wasn't used to that kind of food, Korean food, but now we're obsessed with it, and it's been over 20 years later, and we're learning how to make some of it at home. So it's really good for you. And see, we're doing it in quarters, and again, you just kind of slice it, put a third of the knife down through the cabbage, and then pull it apart gently. So kimchi has, in Korea, they eat it with almost every meal. They eat it breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They eat it in soups. They make kimchi pancakes. Traditionally, they just serve it with rice or as a cold side. And that's how we do it. We just kind of serve it as a cold side, or we kind of throw it in some stir fry or something like that. Again, I'm just kind of pulling that apart gently. Kimchi naturally has some probiotics to kind of strengthen your gut. And it also strengthens your immune system and increases your metabolism, and it's very low in calories. So all around, it's good for you. So again, splitting it apart. And I have about 5 pounds of Napa cabbage here, and you can find Napa cabbage anywhere. There is an Asian store here that you can get cabbage from, but again, this can be found anywhere. So pulling it apart. It was funny because when our kids were younger, they would go to this Korean restaurant, and she would make them hot dogs because they weren't used to the Korean food, but now they love it also. So what we're going to do is now we're going to take this and kind of rinse this off in a large bowl. So I'm just going to throw it all in this large bowl and turn some water on and just start rinsing it here. And you want to kind of get in between all the leaves and rinse it off. And technically, you're supposed to have a large bowl to be able to dip it all in. And you can do some of it at a time, but you just, I don't have a big enough bowl to do all 5 pounds. And I'm just getting it all wet. Kind of rinsing it off here. And the reason we're doing this is because we're going to be adding some salt to the leaves. And one, we're cleaning the leaves right now, but also the wetness is going to help the salt stick to it. And why do we add a bunch of salt? Well, there we go. Now I can actually do what I'm supposed to do and kind of rinse this in here. But we add a bunch of salt because that's what's going to kind of break down the Napa cabbage and make it get into the, kind of start the fermenting phase of it. Now, Koreans, they like to let this ferment for months, and they use an onggi or like a clay pot, and they bury it in the ground, or but you can use really any dish to ferment it. You don't need a special dish to ferment it. And we generally don't like it fermented for months because the more fermentation that happens, the more sour it gets, and then it also gets more limp, so it's not as crispy. We tend to like it fresh, so we like to eat it within about 7 days. After that, it gets a little bit too sour for us. But again, people like it sour and use it in kimchi pancakes or soup. We haven't mastered the soup yet, so we can't use the sour. kimchi for that. So anyway, I have this big bowl, and what I start doing, let me dry off my hands because I want to have one dry hand and then I'm going to have one wet hand basically. And then I'm just going to start sprinkling the salt on, and you're going to be pretty generous with the salt. Hopefully you can see this pretty good. And you're going to lift up each leaf and sprinkle it in there. And you're going to do this with all the cabbage. And you can't get too much salt in there, the more the better. Again, because this helps the fermentation part of it. So I'm just going to keep doing this for all the leaves here. Okay, we're done to the last piece, and as you can see, this is a 24 cup bowl, and I'm putting it all in there, and I kind of alternated, you know, there's some cores on this side and then some cores on this side. Some are upside down, some are right side up, and it doesn't really matter. And as you can see, it's kind of overflowing the bowl, but as it sits here and ferments, it's going to shrink down. And every 30 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and give this a toss, which I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. Okay, so while the cabbage is kind of doing its thing and wilting down and the salt's working on the cabbage, it's going to take about 2 hours, and you're going to flip it every 30 minutes, which in the meantime, while you're waiting for that to happen, you can make the pepper paste. Now, in my food processor here, I have about a cup of onion and 15 cloves of garlic because I'm using 5 pounds of cabbage. If you're only using one Napa cabbage, which is about 2 pounds generally, then you can just use like a half an onion and six garlic cloves. But you want to make a paste. Now, traditionally, they add pear and ginger into this as well, into the paste, but we don't like that. So we're just going to go ahead and just do the onion and garlic. So I'm going to turn this on here. Make sure it's at the right speed. You want it to be kind of like a puree, which you can kind of see it's doing. And so what I'm going to have to do is, you know, scrape that down and then continue to mix it a little bit more, but you get the gist. Your goal is to make a puree out of your onion and your garlic. I wanted to show you the consistency that you're kind of looking for. You can hear it's kind of juicy. And that's kind of like what you're looking for. It's almost like it's not really a puree, but kind of is. Okay, it's time to toss the cabbage. And basically you're gonna take the cabbage that's at the bottom and put it towards the top. And even if you have to hold some in your hand or however you do it, it's fine. There's no right or wrong to this. And then I'm gonna take all this out. Put that in the bottom, flip it, and we'll do this again in a half an hour. Okay, so now what we're going to do is make the rice flour water, and we're going to take 1 1/3 cup of water, and then 4 teaspoons of sweet rice flour. We have ours in a container, but it's just basically Mochiko sweet rice flour. And I don't know if I got this at the Asian food store or if I could get it at some place local. I can't remember for sure, but we're using 4 teaspoons of the sweet rice flour. And we're going to turn this on, kind of give it a stir here. And what this is going to do is when you add this to the onion and the garlic, and then we're going to use some Korean pepper paste and some fish sauce. And this is what's going to basically help the paste, help create the paste so that it kind of sticks to the Napa cabbage. So I'm going to turn it on medium-high heat, but always you never want your flame going over your pan, so I'll do a little bit lower. I'm going to bring this to a boil while kind of trying to break down the rice flour here so that I don't have clumps in there. Actually, I might do a little bit more because I just realized I did it for 4 and I need it for 5. So I'm adding another 1/3 cup of that and another teaspoon of sweet rice flour. So it's basically 1/3 cup of water and a teaspoon of sweet rice flour for every pound of cabbage you got. Okay, as you can see, it's coming to a boil here, and I'm gonna add my brown sugar, and it's again the same ratio, 1 teaspoon for every pound of cabbage you have. We have 5 pounds, so I'm gonna add 4 teaspoons here, kind of mix that in. You don't want it burning, so you gotta kind of stir it frequently here. As you can see, it's changing its color. Go for another minute or 2. And you kind of want it like a thin and soupy texture. You don't want it real thick. And then once we cook it for that 2 minutes, get that thin and soupy texture, then we're gonna let it cool completely. Which is fine because we still have another 1.5 hours or so of the cabbage fermenting with the salt. Let's check it here. Yeah, that looks perfect, just like that. Okay, so we're at our hour mark right now. So again, we're gonna take this and maybe I'll take it from the top, put it in the bottom, but also put the insides out, if that makes sense. Again, there's no rhyme or there's no wrong way to do it. Basically, you're just trying to get, because all the juices basically settle at the bottom, keep eating at the cabbage. So you're just trying to alternate the cabbage that's down and the juices that are kind of settling at the bottom of the bowl. And another 30 minutes. Okay, so as you can see, the cabbage has kind of wilted down. It's no longer sticking over the top of the bowl, and it's pretty flimsy, and that's kind of the texture that you're kind of going for. And that's all just from salt breakdown. Isn't that crazy? So right now what we're gonna do is we're gonna rinse off each of these leaves, and we're gonna separate them as we rinse it, and then we're gonna squeeze all the water out. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. You can get a big bowl and a pan, you know, like a, I don't know, like a roasting pan or something like that and do it, but I just don't have one, so I just do each one by hand and kind of go through. So you want to get as much of the salt off as you can. Obviously, you're not going to be able to get it perfect, but you just kind of squeeze out the water. And this is going to continue to ferment, so that's what you want. Once we get the pepper paste on there. So I'm going to keep doing this, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how to, you know, chop it up and get the pepper paste on there. Okay, so I rinsed off everything and squeezed it out as much as possible. And then now we're just gonna chop it into the chunks that you want. I'll turn each quarter on its side because I want to get rid of this core that's right here. Let's see if you can see, yep. So turn it on its side, just kind of chop that off and toss that aside. I moved my trash bag, so, and then you just start slicing it. And you do that for each of the quarters. And I'm just gonna toss it in the bowl. And then when I'm done, I'll come back. Okay, now that we got it all chopped up, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our mixture that we made earlier of the garlic and onion, that puree, and then we're gonna add our rice flour mixture that we made on the stove earlier. And I'll just go ahead and pour that in there now. And then the special ingredients. So these ingredients, these next two ingredients, I highly recommend going to the Asian food store and getting them because they do make a difference. The first one is gochujang or gochujang. I'm not sure exactly how you say it, but it's in a bag, and I don't know that it'll say gochujang on it. It might say Korean pepper flake, but this is kind of what it looks like. And we're gonna put, and how much you put into this just depends on your spice tolerance and all that. So you just gotta kind of play around with it and see. For us, for 5 pounds, we use 1/3 of a cup and 1/2 a cup. Then the next special ingredient is fish sauce. And the fish sauce, the brand of fish sauce, I figured out makes a difference. So this is the brand of fish sauce that we get. It's like 3 crabs and it looks just like this. And this stuff lasts a really, really long time. It doesn't really go bad. So for every pound of cabbage you have, you put a tablespoon of fish sauce in. So we're gonna do 5 tablespoons today. We're gonna stir it all up. It's gonna turn into like this paste. I know this sounds weird, but I'm getting hungry already just looking at this. Okay, now what I like to do is I like to put on some gloves because the peppers can get underneath your nails and then you touch your eyes or something crazy happens and before you know it, you burnt yourself. So let's see if I can get on my gloves real quick. Okay, my gloves are not fitting perfectly just because my hands are still wet. So you take the cabbage and then you pour the paste on it. And it smells so good. It sounds like it'd be gross because of the fish sauce, but it's really not. It just has a really wonderful smell to it. And then you just kind of stir it up like this. And I like to eat it fresh the same day. It's very good the same day that you make it. But you can put this in like in a glass bowl or a bowl with a tight lid. You could even use the stainless steel bowls. And just kind of set it on the counter for a day or up to 3 days. We set ours on the counter for a day and then we put it in the fridge. When you put it in the fridge, it slows down the fermenting process, but it will still ferment and go sour. It just takes longer to go sour, which is how we like it. If you prefer yours to be more sour, then you just leave it on the counter for 3 days and then stick it in the fridge after that. So once it's all mixed up, it looks like that. And I wish you could see the color a little bit better. It's hard to see, but man, it's gonna be so yummy. So that's how you make kimchi. And like I said, it's really healthy for you, and it's got a lot of probiotics, and it's inexpensive, and it's filling, and it increases your metabolism. So why not give it a shot, right? Okay, we'll see you later.